Well, today, let's start off. Uh, we'll do a basic, initially, we'll do a basic introduction to Plato, and from then on, we'll be going on to, today only, not at another date, on another date or anything. Uh, we will be working on not working on, I'm sorry, we will be talking about various things about what has come to be called um, Plato's epistemology. Okay. Um, we'll also be looking at Plato's epistemology. But by the way of an introduction, uh, let me disabuse you of the notion that Plato wrote only 3 works, one which is the Republic, the other being the Statesman, and the third being the Laws. That is not the case. Plato has written many different works, and you will find that Plato um, is not really a political philosopher. He is a philosopher in which, in whose writings uh, the political plays an important role. Now, you must understand that none of us have read any of these people in Greek, the language in which they wrote. It was actually Attic Greek. Now, if you look at um, Plato as such, uh, Plato wrote about a number of things trying to explain life itself. And in that, it seems as if the political has an important role to play. But while the translations say political, we are not very sure if Plato has used the term or the word political at all. Okay, we are not sure of that. Uh, it could be that it is a translation thing, maybe something else. Some people believe that uh, Plato was more into the republic kind of a situation than the political, which is the polis. And you do not really find him um, using the term polis in his overtly political writings, of which the most famous is the Republic anyway. It's called the Republic. And you must remember that when we talk about the Republic in the context of ancient Greece, the word has, the word signifies completely different things from what it does today. Today, when we talk about a republic, it is people ruling themselves. Primarily, um, that is the definition. It also means that there is some kind of what you call, there is sovereignty involved in it. But in the ancient republics, you don't have those kind of uh, meanings attached. Uh, Now, what you find in Plato is an attempt to create an ideal republic. And here I will draw your attention to the fact that we should not be informed by the language of international relations, which posits the ideal as the opposite of the real. In Plato, I told you yesterday, the ideal is the real. Okay, so we'll come to that when we do his epistemology. Now, what you should remember is that Plato's writing of the Republic, which is of a book of the greatest consequence uh, to us as students of political science, this particular book is the most important for us. And if you have to understand the context in which then it is this particular this is the context, the Peloponnesian War, and along with it, the Periclean Oration. These are the two immediate uh, reasons why Plato basically talked about the uh, or Plato uh, wrote the book The Republic. Okay, so what is the Peloponnesian War? The Peloponnesian War was fought at Peloponnese. Peloponnese is where it was fought. You know, we say the Mahabharata was fought in Kurukshetra, right? The wars of the Mahabharata We say they were fought in the Kurukshetra. So, sorry. Similarly, there was this Peloponnese, where the war was fought between Athens and Sparta. The war lasted 18 years. It wasn't fought continuously. It was an on and off kind of a thing. And at the end of the 18 years, Athens was defeated. Okay. And the leader of the Athenian army was Pericles. Okay. And after the defeat of Athens to Sparta, he made a very famous speech which came to be called the Periclean Oration. In the Periclean Oration, Pericles underlined the reasons why Athens lost the war. And one of his prime reasons was the lack of same the lack of same level of physical fitness in the Athenians as you found in the Spartans. I told you when you talk about Sparta, the first word that comes to you is austerity. Okay, the Spartans led an extremely austere life of, simplicity, bordering on hardships. So the Spartans were not used to comforts, whereas Pericles claimed that the Athenians were had gone into some kind of a state of decay, as a result of which they basically didn't have the same level of physical fitness that the Spartans had. And that is what led to the defeat of the Athenians in the hands of the Spartans. So that is what he identified as one of the main reasons. He also talked about several other reasons, several other lacunae within Athenian society. And he also talked about the non-existence of a proper system of governance. So that is what we call the immediate context and the immediate, or sometimes people will say final cause, or it is also called the precipi cause. For Plato, developing a proper what should I say, a proper and contiguous system of philosophy. Okay, that is, but please remember that Pythagoras, Parmenides, Zeno, all these people continue to play an important role in Plato's epistemology, of which the Republic is a product. Okay, it is more of a political product than any other work of his. So that is why, as students of political science, we tend to study the Republic, because the Republic best exemplifies who and what Plato is. Okay, now having established that there are all these different influences on Plato, let us also try to understand yet another thing about Plato. There aren't too many philosophers in the Western philosophical tradition who have laid emphasis on a system of education as the building block of, well, in the case of Plato, the Republic. Okay, so Plato is probably the first ever philosopher to give a central place to education in his philosophy. There are a lot of philosophers who are educators. Okay. For example, his own student, uh, Aristotle, also was a teacher, right? He was a teacher in Athens. He was a teacher to Alexander the Great. He was a teacher. But you don't find in any of Aristotle's works, you don't find education being given a pivotal or central position. So Plato was also a teacher. Plato was also somebody who developed a system of thought in which education has the pride of place. Another thinker like that you can think of, one who talked about, the centrality of education, the necessity of education in building a republic, is again to be found in the modern period, much, much later, and that is Jacques. Okay. Rousseau wrote a work which is called Emile, or On Education. Okay. In which he talks, I'll deal with that in detail when I go to Rousseau, when we reach Rousseau, in which Rousseau talks about Emile being the imaginary student whom he is educating about the values that one should have, inculcate in life. So you don't find too many philosophers, okay, who do this. And even Rousseau is a little different from Plato, because while Emile talked about education, the necessity, the inculcation of values, the right kind of values through the medium of education, you will see that his really political writing, which is the social contract, does not have a does not make a mention of education. It does not make a mention of education. But in Plato, in the Republic, education is the most prominent theme. It is absolutely the most prominent theme. a theme that you find running through the Republic. And Plato is radical for his times. Okay. What exactly is radical? Somebody tell me.
Completely changing of present situation, that opposite to conservation.
Opposite to conservative. Who's this? Rachna?
Yes, sir.
Hmm. Rachna always answers my questions. Hmm. No, no, no. It's a it's a correct answer. That's why I said you answer my questions. Hmm.
Thanks.
Thank God I'm not asking you anything about maths. Hmm. Then the claims
Why,
that I
sir?
make that I know maths and all, will get exposed completely as bluffing on my part. Yeah. Radical is the opposite of conservative. That's a good enough definition for me. Does Mr. Akshay, is he here? I saw him.
Yes,
Not.
sir.
So do you agree with this definition of radical?
Someone who wants to change the system.
So you agree with
Correct.
Rachna?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. See, the reason why I asked you a question and the reason why I'm pleased with the answer I got is because we in this country have this unfortunate uh, tendency to associate radicalism or the word radical itself with things like communism, and not just communism but also with what was once
Terrorism.
called Naxalism, okay, or terrorism. Yes, is that what you were saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, terrorism. And now that Naxalism is no longer called Naxalism, it's called Maoism. I don't know, but there is a government advisory. There was, let's put it that way, there was a government advisory where there was this whole idea of, uh, you know, please no, don't call these Maoists as Nakshals anymore. Okay, don't call them as Nakshals. We call them Naxalites. Actually, it's not Naxalite. Do you know the origin of Naxalite? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Uh,
It came from Naxalbari.
Movement, Naxalbari movement is.
yeah, actually, the movement started in a place called
Naxalbari in West Bengal.
Nakshal Badi. It's not Bari, it's Nakshal Badi. Okay. Nakshal Badi is the place where the movement started, and then they became Nakshalites. It is not uncommon for people to write X in order to say Ksha. For example, there is a classmate of yours, Lakshmi Priya, who writes Laxmi, Lakshmi, right? So Lakshmi Priya Chellammala. So she also writes X, where you could have written something like KSH. Okay, so it's not Naxalites, it's Nakshalites. But there was this strange advisory not to call the people Nakshalites anymore, but to call them uh, Maoists. So people who are associated in some way or the other with violence, because even communism talked about a bloody revolution. Marx himself advocated a bloody revolution to usher in communism. So when you talk about radical in India, it is associated first and foremost with the left. Okay. And first and foremost, it is associated with the left. And even in the left, it is associated with the radical left. It is the radical left because people here are advocating violence, the use of violence. But that is not the true meaning of radical. Okay, radical basically means something which is very different and probably against, need not always be against. Okay, it may be radically different and probably against established ideas or norms. So radical will be the opposite of the establishment, as it is called. Okay, the establishment symbolizes what is the source of power in terms of knowledge. Okay, so if you go against that, then you're radical. If you're ahead of your own times, okay, then you're radical. And Plato is radical in these ways, not in the violent ways. Can somebody tell me why we were talking about left? Why are the leftists called leftists? Anybody?
Sir, there are three types, sir, in the politics: left, right wing, and centrist.
Hmm.
Leftists are totally like communist,
So why call
right?
them leftists? Why not call them rightists?
Uh, they wanted to change the tradition culture one, and they want to bring some new
Hmm.
like working classes, unions, justice.
No, no, all that I agree, but why call them leftists?
They're opposite to maybe tradition,
So
prolonged
why is
tradition.
tradition right?
Mm,
Why is
yes, sir.
tradition not left? Hmm?
Mm, tradition.
You say those who talk about tradition are right wingers.
Yes,
Yeah? So
yes.
why do we say they are right wingers? Why do we call these people left wingers?
They are they propagate the so long culture and tradition, so they are rightist.
Hmm.
Uh,
No, ma'am.
they are
Actually,
opposite.
actually, if you look at the evolution, the immediate cause again is Has anyone heard of this?
Yes, sir.
Please tell me, what is it?
I hope it is Parliament of France.
Yeah. The Parliament of France was called Estates Générales at one time. It's no longer called that. Okay. Now, what you must understand is that it was always the kings who had to summon the parliament, and just before the French Revolution of 1789, the king reluctantly summoned a meeting of the Estates Générales, okay? Or some people call it Estates General in English. It is also called States General because there's no difference between estate as a word and state at that time. Now there is a little bit. We'll talk about that later when we come to the state. Though state is derived out of estate. Okay, but what is the press called? The press, the media now, we should call it, not
Fourth
the.
estate.
So which are the first three estates?
Executive, legislature, and judiciary.
Executive, legislature.
Judiciary.
Is that so?
Yes, I think.
They are the estates. This is 1789, ma'am. We didn't have executive and judiciary and all this properly. It was supposed to be the king was the first estate. The lords were the second estate. The people were the third estate. And there was a viewing gallery. There was a viewing gallery in the Estates Générales where the members of, in those days it was just a print medium that was available. So the members of the print medium sat there and they were pointed out and said, these are the fourth estate. Okay, that's how the fourth estate came. And when the king summoned the estates general, all the conservatives, all those people who wanted the continuation of the monarchical and feudal system in France, they sat on the right side of the estates general, and all those people who didn't want the continuation of monarchy, who wanted the abolition of the feudal system, they sat on the left side. Okay, so that is the reason why when people talk about the establishment, they say people are on the right wingers. But those who wanted change were on the left, so they were the left wingers. That's how the modern usage came. But let me ask you a question. Why did all the people who wanted the continuation of the monarchy, why did they sit on the right? Any idea? Any idea?
No
Maybe it
idea,
is
sir.
stable government.
No, why did they sit on the right?
They supported, no, sir.
So why sit on the right? You can sit anywhere and support.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. You have to go to Jewish and Christian mythology to understand this. Have you heard of this name? Not any particular person. Generally, have you heard of this name?
I heard, sir. Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin, yeah. So do you know the significance that Christian names hold?
No, sir.
Anybody who, when I say Christian names, it's names like this. Benjamin. Another name I can think of is Arthur. Any idea?
No idea.
Arthur comes from the word bear. That is the biblical name for bear, B-E-A-R. And bears are supposed to have an amazing sense of direction. Okay, bears are supposed to have an amazing sense of direction. So the bears came to be called Arthur, and somebody who had a great sense of direction was called Arthur. Later on, it became just a name. That's the same story with Benjamin. Do you know what it originally means? Benjamin is not a very common Christian name. It's more of a Jewish name. It is there among Christians as well. We had a colleague called Dr. Benjamin, and I used to tell him, "You are neither a doctor nor a Benjamin." Jocularly, of course. Benjamin basically means right hand. Benjamin means right hand. And what does the right hand signify? Anyone who knows that? Okay. The right hand signifies power. Are you aware of this? Anyone?
No, sir.
Yeah. The right hand signifies power. And I don't know if you know this, it is medically proven that the right side of our body is slightly larger than the left side of our body. Even today, medicine will agree with this. So the right and most number of people in the world are right-handers. So right, why do you say that is the right answer? That is, you could have just said it's a correct answer, but we say that is the right answer. That is because it signifies power. That's the reason why you use that. So people in the estates genre have not sat, had not sat in the right side accidentally. They did it deliberately. They did it deliberately because right side signifies power. The opposite side is the left side, and that does not signify power. In fact, it signifies the lack of power. Is Madam Padmanand still with us, or has she got tired of this nonsense and gone off?
I'm there, sir.
You're there.
Yeah.
What a terrible return, no? You come after so many days and you're having to hear this nonsense. But believe
No,
me,
sir, no.
this is much better than what I told them when I taught them Parmenides, especially Parmenides and Zeno.
I actually went through some classes. I saw them on YouTube.
They were horrible, right?
They were heavy. At the go to listen, they were heavy.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So people didn't sit accidentally, they deliberately sat on the right. The right is the establishment because it symbolizes power. Okay. The holders of power are always on the right. Okay. So the estates general, that is how it came to have people sitting on the right and left. Centrists are people on the wall, Rachna Garu. They are not people who take a stand. Okay, they are just people who sit on the wall. So radical has been used in with the starting of the radical with left started with the French Revolution and the session of the estates general just before the revolution took place. So that's how radical came to be associated with the left, but it need not be associated with the left in every context. Need not be. Radical is somebody who is very different from the established system, somebody who's saying something, is asking for a change which is rather large, something which is extremely what should we say? It's a complete paradigm shift. When you ask for that kind of a change, then you basically call them radical. And it is in that sense that Plato is radical. Okay. And you will also see that Rousseau was himself a radical, but I'll talk about him later. I've already spoken about other things far too long. Now let's come back to Plato. Now, if we come to, ouch, I somehow ended getting rid of what I wanted. Okay, if we come to Plato's epistemology, what is it that Plato is basically trying to tell us? Okay, Plato, if you need to understand him, you need to understand that Plato is a true successor to Parmenides. Though he's inspired by Parmenides, he uses the categories used by Parmenides, but he goes beyond Parmenides as well. But Plato, you remember epistemology, right? Akshay, just remind us quickly what epistemology is.
A system of knowledge.
Thank you. So now that we've been reminded of what epistemology is, Plato did not believe in the fact, or rather in the idea, that you had to gather knowledge through your senses. Okay. He believed that all knowledge is inborn or innate. That is a better word than inborn. I have put it as inborn, not a very good word to use. Thought I'll simplify it. Innate is that which is there in your mind right from the time of your birth. So Plato's argument is human beings are knowledgeable right from their birth. Right? They are knowledgeable right from their time of birth and true knowledge. I'll also put this. For him, true knowledge or real knowledge is necessarily innate. Necessarily. Okay. So, what exactly is Plato saying? Plato is going by a conception which is exactly the opposite of the kind of conception that we have today. Okay, we believe at birth you have an empty mind. It is through interaction with the external to us, external world that we gain knowledge. This is what we believe. Okay, so now this is saying something like this. Suppose you've seen a dog, or rather, sorry, I got it the wrong way. Suppose you haven't seen a dog. How do you know what a dog is?
With eyes.
No, 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 no.
Huh?
Madam, understand my question. Suppose you have not seen a dog, your eyes are open. I'm not saying that. But you never had a chance to see a dog, either as a picture or as an animal, real three-dimensional animal. If you haven't seen a dog, how do you recognize one when you see it? You should have the thing that you should see a dog to know what a dog is. Isn't that what we believe? Rachna Garu? Hmm? Unless we see a dog, we won't know what a dog is, no?
Hmm.
You believe in that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plato didn't believe in that. Okay.
Hmm.
Plato did not believe in that. If you ask a question like this to Plato, how will somebody who never saw a dog know what a dog is? How will he know what a dog is? If you ask Plato this question, Plato will give you a counter question. How did the person who saw a dog for the first time know that he was seeing a dog? How did he know that he was not seeing a donkey, or he was not seeing an elephant? So how did he know that this is a dog? So he says, knowledge is inborn. That is why you can differentiate between a dog and a donkey. That is what Plato says. Okay. And so for him, this knowledge is already contained in our mind, and external stimulus, or we just call it an external stimulus, from the world outside only makes us realize what we already know. This is what Plato says. And if there are any naysayers, skeptics who are thinking that Plato is an idiot, let me give you one more example from the 20th century. If you like 21st century also, still around, the man that I'm going to talk about. Have you heard of this man? Has anyone heard of Noam Chomsky?
Yes, sir.
Who is he?
Professor.
That is an insult to him. Even I am a professor. Huh? How can you insult that great man like this by just calling him a professor? What was he a professor of?
English, linguistics.
Linguistics, correct? He was a professor of linguistics, and he belonged to this school called the structuralist school. Have you heard of structuralist school?
No, sir.
It pertains to language, to the idea of language. Structuralist school can be traced back to a 19th century figure whose name is Ferdinand de Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure is considered to be one of the early structuralists. And he is supposed to have introduced the linguistic turn into all kinds of philosophy. So one of the philosophers who used language extensively to understand even political philosophy is this man about whom I'll talk a little later when we do Hobbes. But for the moment, let me tell you this. Ludwig, it's pronounced Ludwig Wittgenstein. That's not the spelling, is it? There's something wrong there. Wittgenstein. Anyway, that is a wrong spelling. That's not the spelling of Wittgenstein. I think it is EN, but I can't change it. So just leave it as it's. So Ludwig Wittgenstein did a complete analysis of Thomas Hobbes and the Leviathan by analyzing the language used by Hobbes. Okay, and later on, another person who basically did a similar exercise was this Frenchman Louis Althusser. Louis Althusser did an analysis of the language used by Baron de Montesquieu. You remember Montesquieu?
Yes, sir.
Who was he?
French
Mm,
philosopher.
separation of
He wrote
Separation of.
a book called Spirit of
really,
Laws.
really spirit of law. Yeah.
Hmm. He was
Yes, sir.
instrumental in propounding the theory of separation of powers.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
Power and religion, I think.
No, just the idea of separation of powers. He,
Uh,
the, um, so we have Baron de Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Marx being analyzed through the words that they have used by Louis Althusser, who's a structuralist, a madman, and he's unreadable. Please believe me. And when I say he was a madman, he was pretty close to actually being that. He murdered his wife, went to jail, and all that kind of stuff. But he's also brilliant. Uh, Louis Althusser is somebody who argues that in Rousseau, I'm just giving you one small example. I'm not going to dwell on this for too long. If you look at his writings, he says what you have in Rousseau is not a social contract, but you only have a precondition for a social contract. And therefore, he failed in establishing his social contract. That is what Louis Althusser basically says. He only created a precondition for a social contract, but not an actual social contract. Okay, similarly about Marx. He says Marx Marx has a very different view of ideology, not the kind of view that we commonsensically have. He wanted to get rid of ideology, but Althusser analyzes him linguistically and says that there is nothing in Marx's language which will make you, which will facilitate the overcoming of ideology. Okay, but I'll talk about all that later. But let's get back to Noam Chomsky. And Chomsky is somebody who basically says that when we are born with structures of language in our head. And that is what makes it possible for us to learn not just one language, but many languages. The argument that Noam Chomsky gives, let me explain that with otherwise it will become too abstract. Okay, let's say a child was born to a French mother and a German father, but immediately after separation from the parents, immediately after birth, the child is separated from the parents and given to a Bihari couple who speak Bhojpuri. You know Bhojpuri, right? It's a language. Seriously? Does people have not heard of Bhojpuri? Who has heard of Bhojpuri? No?
Yes, sir. It's a language. They have a film industry too.
Yeah. It goes Ka ba, ka karat hai. It's spoken mainly in
Right.
Bihar, and parts of Uttar Pradesh, and right into Varanasi. Okay, so Bhojpuri, so you bring this newborn child, separate it straight away from its parents, and give them to a Bhojpuri couple. Now, what language will the child learn?
Bhojpuri.
Why?
He was born and brought up by
He was not
Bhojpuri
born.
couple.
He was not born for a Bhojpuri couple.
Brought up
Hmm. Brought up.
by brought
Hmm.
by Bhojpuri couple.
So, but his parents don't know Bhojpuri. So what does this tell you? What kind of conclusion will you draw from this? Hmm? What
What we listen, what we are taught right from the birth or young age,
hmm.
we will grasp that.
And how is that possible, madam?
Because right from the young age, the child sees and listens to what others talk, what others do, and that is what he learns.
That is true, but what makes that possible? I'm not
Human
disputing.
mind is tabula rasa.
Sense organs.
No, you're going the opposite way. Both Rachna and Akshay, Pandit Akshay ji, human mind is not tabula rasa. That is precisely the point I'm trying to establish. Noam Chomsky basically argues that all languages have the same structure of syntax, semantics, and semiotics. Anyone, what is syntax? Syntax is grammar.
Yeah.
Syntax is grammar. Semantics is meaning. And semiotics is symbols. Do you know that interspecies communication is possible? If you keep dogs, you will understand one thing. Okay? If you keep dogs. If somebody has a pet dog, which is a puppy still, go visit them. And if that puppy is being naughty, ask the friend to do this. Doing that will stop the puppy from being very active. They understand this, no sound. They also understand their names and all that. That is through sound. Okay, that is through sound. The way in which you speak, they can understand if you're angry or not. That is through sound. That is because of semantics. Okay, meaning. They associate, like for example, if my dogs get onto the bed, I say, digo. They understand that. It takes them a little while, but they get it. Little while meaning about 5 days. Okay. So grammar, semantics, meaning, and semiotics, symbols, all these together can be a part of language. So you know that the deaf and the mute, they have a language based entirely on symbols. Through gestures they speak. But what words are they forming? Are they forming different words? No. They are forming words in the same language that we know. They're forming the same words. Keep quiet. They'll understand. That is because structures of language are inbuilt in all brains. Remember, again, this is also interspecies. The way in which my dog makes a sound, I can find out if it wants to go out. Okay. Or I can see that some friend has come, or that some stranger has come, just by listening to how my dogs make various sounds. So that's language. Language is nothing but sound. Jacques Derrida will tell you that writing is a subtype of sound. Language is sound production, and the structures of the sound production, they are built into our head at the time of birth. And that is why a child born to a French and German parents can learn Bhojpuri. Send him back to France and Germany, he'll learn French and German. I have a friend who's married to a Spaniard. So the son speaks fluent Spanish, fluent Telugu, and English. So what is it that makes this possible? That is, when you say all languages have the same structure of syntax, semantics, and semiotics, what we are saying is that all languages have the same structure. It is just the inflection of different sounds that makes them look and seem separate. But otherwise, there is a unity of language. That is what the structuralist argument is. Unity of language. And language is necessarily sound. Madam Padma, do you read novels?
No, sir.
You don't read novels. What do you read?
I don't like reading books only.
You don't like reading. My God. You never read anything?
Read storybooks, sir.
No. You read some storybook, no?
Yeah.
So, when you read a storybook, did you hear a voice in your head?
Yes, we actually imagine the character to be speaking when we read his line.
Yeah, and
Right?
you hear that voice, right?
Right.
Yeah,
At the back of the mind. We just
yes,
imagine.
correct. That is because writing is a subtype of speech. So when we read something, we hear that character saying something in the back of our mind. We hear that, right? So Chomsky believed that structures of language are already inbuilt. They need an external stimulus. All that they need is an external stimulus that will activate it. And it is possible for us to know many languages because all languages have an underlying similarity. It's just the inflections of words that is different. But the syntax, semantics, and semiotic part is similarity. And since it is very similar, what happens is that we end up learning many languages. P.V. Narasimha Rao knew 15 languages. That's a great achievement, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why I tell people, don't think you can't learn English. You just need to practice it. You practice it, you'll get it just like that because the structures are already there in your mind. They're there. All you need to do is activate it. And activation comes through practice, nothing more.
Sir,
Yeah.
by the way, how many languages did Noam Chomsky know?
Noam Chomsky, Noam Chomsky probably knew about 30. 40. Why?
To know, sir.
No? You just wanted to know, is he saying that stupid fellow? Is he saying all this without knowing the languages? No, no. He was somebody who even understood the OP Indian language. Or actually, I don't know if it's OP or Hopi, HOPI, Hopi Indian language. He knew the Navajo Indian language. Okay, he knew the Sioux Indian
He can
language.
speak, or he only
He can
understand.
speak. He can speak. He
In
can
an
speak.
interview with the Michel Foucault, he didn't speak in French, sir. He only spoke in English.
Sorry?
With Michel Foucault,
Hmm.
there is an interview in YouTube.
In YouTube.
YouTube. He
Ah.
didn't speak in French.
No, that is deliberate. He is pretty fluent in French. He's fluent in German. That is deliberate. That is deliberate. Okay, I've had the occasion of meeting him thrice. So I'm not talking without knowing what I'm saying. I've met him thrice. Met him means not hello and get out. I spent time with him 3 times. Okay. So he knows many languages. Don't worry about him. Yes. 1487268. What can I do for you? No. Raised a hand by mistake, I guess. Okay. No, Chomsky knows many languages. Don't worry about that, Akshay. Don't look down upon him. He's not an idiot. He knows what he's talking about. Now he's become a political thinker. That's a different issue. Okay. Right now he's a political thinker. He stopped doing linguistics. Anyway, so to come back to Plato, Plato is saying the same thing about all knowledge. That just as Noam Chomsky said, language, structures of language are inbuilt and it facilitates the learning of many different kinds of languages by one person. You have inbuilt, innate structures of language, which is the opposite of tabula rasa. This is tabula rasa. This point, at birth you have an empty mind. And that is John Locke. Okay? Tabula rasa is a Lockean concept. That is what he talked about in his essay concerning human understanding. We'll have to talk about that as well, because that's a paradigm shift. Anyway, so Plato's theory of knowledge, therefore, is that knowledge is not acquired through the medium of senses, which is what tabula rasa says. He says we are born with language. We just need to see. We just need to come into contact with something, and that stimulates the knowledge that is already present in our heads. Okay, please remember, knowledge, the language also is there in our head. But if you keep somebody locked away, they don't learn a language. If you don't let them get into a situation where they speak to people, then they won't learn the ability to speak. So external stimulus is important. Same thing is argued by Plato. External stimulus is necessary, but the structures of knowledge are already there in your head. So when you are born, you are not born with an empty mind. You are born with a mind that has language in it. Sorry, what am I saying? Knowledge in it. So he even goes on to explain how we get knowledge in our brain at the time of birth itself. And in order to understand that, where should I put this? We have to understand his argument. This is Plato. Okay. This is central to Plato's epistemology, about his argument about the realm of forms. Okay. So I think it is 10:37, so I'd better stop today. So whoever still has some enthusiasm left for doing Plato, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do the realm of forms first and go into his other aspects later. The primary thing that we need to know is the realm of forms, because that is the foundation of his epistemology and the foundation of the argument that human beings are born with innate knowledge. Okay, and this is very different from the theory of form that you find in Aristotle. Okay, Aristotle talks about form. He doesn't talk about forms. He talks about it in the singular, and he doesn't talk about it as a realm. He talks about it as a theory. But that is when we come to Aristotle. Okay, from here on, we'll be moving faster, if that is of any consolation to you. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Righto. Tomorrow we'll start with the argument about the realm of forms. Thank you very much. You've been very patient, putting
Thank you,
up
sir.
with me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hopefully see you tomorrow. So